Service in 1959 and worked in Cork, Limerick and Portlaoise prisons. Brian was shot in the back of the head at 10:49 on the night of Friday, the 25th of March 1983. The gun used was a .38 special caliber revolver. Brian was 47 years of age. His three sons were 14, 13 and 12 when their father was shot. Brian's son Austin Stack followed in his father's footsteps and became a prison officer.
My father and my mother went on a holiday to America, so that would have been the summer before, which would have been about 8 months before he was shot. This picture here was actually taken in Alcatraz in San Francisco. And on the back of the picture was held by the Pope at the time that my father was in a coma. His whole life revolved around his family. From a very small age, we were, he'd set up a little ring in the house, and we'd all have boxing gloves, and we'd all spar with each other. And when we were old enough, we went down to the boxing club. He was an international boxing referee and a judge. Saturday evenings was always boxing evening, and we'd be down to the local club, or if there was a tournament down somewhere, we'd be heading off to that.
On Friday night, the 25th of March 1983, Brian and some friends were at the National Stadium on the South Circular Road in Dublin attending the Irish Senior Boxing Championships. Brian crossed the road to Washington Street, where his friend's car was waiting. Brian didn't notice a man holding a .38 special caliber revolver walk up behind him. The gunman ran to a nearby corner where another man had pulled up on a motorbike. The two men then drove off at speed down the South Circular Road. Brian Stack didn't die that night. Two doctors helped save his life, but he was in a coma and paralysed.
I was woken with a lot of activity around the house, sometime around midnight, and I went down, and my two uncles were there with my mother, and they told me to go back to bed, that there'd been an accident, is what I was told. But I actually heard it the following morning on the news. I had the radio in the room, and I turned it on, and I heard it on the news, and I went down and told my two brothers. It was it's kind of a long time waiting to see him, and my mother was up and down every day, and we didn't know whether he would actually pull through at that stage or not. And when he did wake up, he was very badly brain damaged. He was paralysed from the neck down. He was kind of deaf in one ear.
The day after the shooting took place, a stolen motorbike was taken from the Grand Canal near Portobello in Dublin. It was a Kawasaki Z400J, which was black, grey and red in colour. It's believed that this was the bike used by the gunman and his accomplice. The original number plate was altered to read 76GZI. The gunman was described by witnesses as being about 25 or 26 and about 5 foot 8 inches tall. The man on the motorbike was 20 to 25, 5 foot 9 to 5 foot 11. He wore a white bell-make type helmet. Gardaí have photo fits of two men who were seen on the day of the shooting and in the area some days prior to the shooting.
He came home, we had a room specially adapted for him, we had a special bed brought in, we had a hoist put in the room to take him in to have a shower and that. There was one time when I was actually shaving him, and he started to cry, and you could see that he was crying because his 15-year-old son was actually shaving him.
Brian was shot on the 25th of March 1983. On the 11th of September 1984, Brian fell unconscious and stopped breathing. His wife and neighbour managed to resuscitate him, but he never regained consciousness. Brian died on Saturday the 29th of September 1984, 18 months after he was shot.
My mother was made a widow at a very, very young age. I have kids, my two brothers, Kieran and Oliver, both have children, and they're beginning to ask questions like, what happened to Grandad? As a family, we've never had any closure. We're more so looking for answers and for closure.
Well, this is one of the first cases which has been looked at by the new Garda Serious Crimes Review team. JJ, 24 years since this killing. How can people help now?
Well, we welcome any opportunity to revisit this investigation. And this was a major crime in 1983 and in any year in which a high-ranking prison officer was shot and subsequently died. It took more than the two people that were seen in the clip and two people that committed the murder to carry out this shooting. We believe there was a major organisation. A lot of planning went into it. Surveillance had to be carried out. Brian's movements would have been monitored on the night and possibly weeks prior to this. We believe that a lot of people on the periphery would be in a position to give us help. There was a motorbike stolen. It was kept for 2 months. The two shooters were spirited out of the area. So we're appealing to those people who were on the periphery, who may not have agreed with the final outcome of what happened, and after the lapse of 25 years, that we believe that they may now be in a position to give us some assistance and to forward this investigation.
The photo fits, we saw them briefly in the film there of the two guys who were probably in their 20s at the time, which means they'd now be, what, late 40s? Yeah,
late 40s, early 50s.
Significant one here.
Yes, that particular photo fit, the driver of the motorbike, he had what was described as a beauty spot or a mole high on his right cheek, and that's possibly significant. That's the only significant.
Quite identifiable in many respects, isn't it?
It would be, yes.
The other guy there, obviously, 24 years later.
Yes, that was the technology at the time, and what the investigation had to work with. Certainly, I think the best thing would be possibly the mole on the right cheek.
On the other guy. In terms of forensic advances over the last 24, 25 years, presumably it has moved on a lot, and can that help your investigation?
Yes, certainly. Evidence was gathered at the scene, and I know if we had a suspect nominated on the forensic science at the moment, we would be possibly well placed to further the investigation. It would certainly be of great help.
All right, well, we wish you the best of luck with it, JJ. Thanks very much indeed for that. As Austin Stack, Brian's son, said, the family desperately want closure. So if you have any information on that case, no matter how insignificant you may think it might be, please do phone us 1-800 40 50 60 or free text the word crime followed by your message to 50308.
Of us, the crime they couldn't solve is just another plot line from one of the growing number of detective shows on television. But for the families of victims, they represent unresolved trauma and justice denied. But justice is taking a second pass at these so-called cold cases. With the help of new technology and new practices, Gardaí are reopening the files of some unsolved crimes. But these new investigations are also raising some tough ethical questions. Adrian Lydon's been talking to families with a very personal stake in cracking the cold cases.
These are the faces of the victims of some of the country's most horrific and violent crimes. But what they also have in common is that their murders remain unsolved. Now, for the first time, a special cold case team has been set up to investigate hundreds of cases.
Well, we have 207 cases dating from 1980 to today's date. We are looking at the cases and we're carrying out a preliminary examination of each case. and we examine the cases in order to see what opportunities exist at present in relation to, say, witness opportunities. Are the witnesses still available from, you know, the original case? Are there forensic opportunities? Are the suspects still alive?
It was late at night in March 1983 when a senior prison officer, Brian Stack, was shot in the back of the neck after leaving a boxing tournament in the National Stadium. He was left severely brain damaged and paralysed from the neck down.
He came home for the last 6 months of his life. He needed 24/7 care. He could get very emotional and he could get very childlike. Several instances like spring to mind. One instance, I was actually shaving him and he started to cry. And, you know, things like that just kind of got to him a little bit. He was very brain damaged, as I say.
Brian Stack only survived for 18 months following the attack. His passing shocked the country as to how a senior servant of the state could have met such a fate.
As far as I'm aware, he may have been working on he may have discovered how the Provisional IRA and the other subversives were getting contraband, explosives, ammunition, etc. into the prison. There was a very large escape attempt in 1986, 12 months after my father had died. There was 2 guns, there was 20 rounds of ammunition, and there was some Semtex used in that escape attempt. And my gut feeling is that my father knew how that stuff was coming into the prison and that certain people wanted him taken out of Portlaoise at the time.
The Garda's investigation into his death didn't go very far. Even a strong witness description of the possible attacker didn't reap any results.
An informant gave a couple of names to the Gardaí. They arrested those. When those didn't turn up to be fruitful to the investigation, there seems to have been nothing more done. There was no staff or prisoners from Portlaoise prison interviewed at the time, as far as we're aware. There was no follow-up done on that ID of a person who was standing beside the bike. It just seems that the investigation centred around taking statements off the witnesses on the night and arresting the guys on the word of an informant, and after that it doesn't seem to have had any great detective work done on the case.
Primetime understands that Gardaí are currently looking at 2 cases, that of Brian Stack and the murder of Paul Ryan, a 27-year-old from Raheny in Dublin whose body was found dumped on a quiet country road in Coolderry in County Offaly in April 2003.
Well, the cases have potential, but there are other cases that we are looking at the moment which we would believe have a lot of potential as well for development. Every case that you do look at, you know, you do see something that you can do something with the case, but DNA, forensic science, witness opportunities, they're the very, very strong points that we have to consider in any of the investigations we take on.